Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the TT Podcast, the greatest podcast in the world, unofficially, and the podcast where we talk to one person from the world of the TT to discuss their lives, their journeys, and their ambitions with the greatest motorsporting event in the world. And it really is, isn't it, Lee Johnston?
Without doubt.
Name another one.
The Manx Grand Prix.
It's a close second, but other than that, nothing.
Nothing even comes close.
Today's guest.
I'm excited.
I had a sleepless night worrying about this one, like I've done with a few, but this one is... I'm excited about this one. The first time I ever met Cam. So the guest is, if you didn't know, Cameron Donald. Of course you did, because it's in the title and it's in the thumbnails. He said hello to me as if we were mates. Obviously, he'd watched a bit of the podcast, or he knew me from something. So when he saw me, like, double took and went, "Hiya, mate, you all right?" I was like, "Oh my God, he knows."
Your long, illustrious career does precede you.
Absolutely, yeah. But we're in TT royalty.
I'm in a little bit of a fanboy moment.
Let's get it out of the way now.
What? So he doesn't realise?
I'm sure he's going to realise the moment he walks in and he goes.
I've got a lot of questions without like sitting asking them, but like boyhood questions. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm excited.
Let's get him on. Cameron Donald, welcome to the TT Podcast. I've been waiting for this one.
This is the first time I've done a bit of fanboying.
You said that in the group
Yeah.
on the way.
Oh, come on now, stop.
No.
It's true though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm slightly nervous about this one. I don't even know where to start. But tell me about your TT podcast experience. Have you listened to any?
Yeah, I have.
Have you?
Listened to a lot of them, yeah, especially before the TT. When they first came out, I remember listening to them, and we'd had such a break in racing, and I remember I'd listen to them working construction. Quite often I'd leave home like 5 o'clock and have an hour and a half drive. So it's perfect listening, get into it. And I remember because my best mates Trevor I work with, you know, he was listening to them too, and would often say, "How much does it get the adrenaline pumping?" You know,
Yeah.
Australia's a long way away, and the thought of coming back over,
It brings you a
getting
little
back
bit
to the
closer.
TT, yeah, it definitely did, and it was good just hearing everyone speak, and you hear a lot of stuff that you haven't heard before. So no, generally it was really, really good.
Good. That's not to throw you under the bus, and just in case you'd not listened to any. But the point being, obviously, we start the podcast with the same question to everyone that's raced or is currently racing. And it's all about the tap on the shoulder, about what it feels like, especially what we tend to find is like going through no man's land is kind of where the race starts for a lot of people. And the nerves kind of dim down a little bit because the focus is on the race. But for you, what was it like rolling up to the start line, getting that hand on that shoulder, and then eventually getting that tap?
It's a surreal experience. It really is. I've often said if you could bottle the emotions that you experience in that short period of time, it's incredible. It really feels like the world stands still. It's only moments, but sometimes it feels like in hindsight or retrospect, it feels like a long period of time. You remember every detail, the people fussing around, mechanics packing up, looking at the strain in other people's faces that at the time you don't pick up on, but when you look back, just that look when you look at a fellow competitor in the eye and you give each other that look like you know what you're about to do, and look up at the flags waving on the back of the grandstand, and I'd always look out for the Aussie flag and think, okay, this is it, it's game time, you know. But it's gets the hair standing up now just thinking about
even
it.
saying that makes me nervous. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm sat nervous.
And I'd often get a flash
yeah.
of like, why aren't I still plumbing or concreting, or what am I even doing here? You know, that was probably before that moment. That moment when you walk up, it's like, you know.
So what is when you are walking up? Are we nervous? Are we composed and ready? Or because from what I've researched and learned, all your racing career, especially, you've been an intense fella that has always gone to win. You've not just rocked up to turn up and take on the course. You've come to win. Which
is, I think, the majority of the field are. I mean, everyone thinks like that, don't they?
Yeah, but
not as intensely though.
I was definitely wound up like a spring.
Yeah, but you have to remember, he hasn't drove 20 miles down the road. The man's come from the other side of the world. He hasn't come here to, I'll have a mosey round today. You know, I say this about Irish people that go to England to race. Like, it's harder for us to go and compete because you have to get on the fair. It's a lot of hassle. That sounds pathetic, sat beside Cam, because he was nearly Irish for quite a while. He come and lived there, but the commitment to do that for anyone, or anybody that you rid for or raced with or anything, they couldn't deny that you give up a lot to get there. So that's maybe was the basis of a lot of the
It could have been, but yeah, definitely. I know I was intense, probably too much my own good at times, but because I think it's wasted energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, wound up like a spring, sharp as it, just focused.
Yeah.
You know, all the hours, you know, on the push bike, in the gym, in the pool, on the motocross, you know, it all comes to that. All the circuit knowledge rehearsal, the laps, everything, you're there. Okay, this is it. This is the time. And yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful feeling, really. Terrifying, you know, inside. But at the time, you just, you know, you're so sharp, you're so focused, and you're just so ready to just head down that road and get the job going.
It's a strange thing to think that there's not many people that would ever experience that in their lifetimes, like literally ever. And you get to feel that on a daily basis for 2 weeks. And that's kind of when you're really, in my eyes, I don't know if I'm right in saying this, but that's when you're really living, right? You're actually living. Absolutely.
And it's something that you know, the emotion, the feeling, I still feel now when I'm up there doing the commentary job. It's overwhelming almost at times. And I thought it was something that only a TT racer could feel. And I remember being up in the grandstand when I was injured, and I think it was Andrew Pitt was over, and Glenn Richards too, come over for a look, both Aussie competitors racing World and British Championship. And they were like, whoa, this is heavy. And I'm like, you guys can feel this? And they were like, yeah. And then lucky enough, when Mark Webber came over chatting to him, he said, the feeling on that grid was like nothing else. That was incredible. And there's at the time, a current F1 driver saying that, you know, and you're like...
It's an understanding though, I think. You know, like if you've got an understanding of any, whether it be cycling, you know, anything, if you have an understanding of, there's a lot relying on this, and then that's maybe something where there is no risk involved. Like Formula One's pretty safe. It's not, you know what I mean? It's still things still happen, but they have an understanding how they feel in a sport that's pretty safe. You bring them to somewhere like this, and they go, "This is like different." It's nearly the more knowledge you have, the more you will feel that. I think, you know, you could bring someone like. I bring my missus or whatever. She obviously understands, but she's never been in that pressure environment for themselves to understand, and maybe something that's not as dangerous, and then all of a sudden you heap what the actual risks are involved, and these people that are very good at their job all of a sudden go, maybe not for me.
And on the other side of the coin, I've had friends here this year at the TT that have never been, and like even a mate's missus that have never done motorsport, but got them up on the edge of the grid, and even they were saying afterwards, like, that's heavy. Like, wow, the feeling, you know, what they're feeling, nerves as well, the excitement, you know, it's a really special place, that. And it's quite incredible, that small area, and the amount of motion in the air and what's going on at that time.
Yeah, I suppose you don't feel the range of emotions in many other places where there is all that excitement for what's about to happen, but also with that mind on the fact that, you know, this is dangerous. I remember the first time I was up there, 2018, I think, and I was shaking. I was like, why are these boys, what is going on? This needs to stop right now. This is just...
I think it's if you've got any observance in your, you know, you can see, if you get home, you can tell when your missus is in a bad mood, you know what I mean? You can tell when someone's stressed out. If you look at mechanics or team owners or sponsors or anything, and everyone is in that similar sort of situation, if they've got any care or it's either care to win or care to worry or, you know, these things, it looks like a similar shitting themselves expression, do you know what I mean? And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I would feel okay. You're obviously nervous, but I don't suffer like some people are like nigh on sick. And I would feel okay until I get there. And then I look at a lot of people and go, holy shit, they're all like proper cacking themselves. Yeah. They're not even getting on the bike. And I'm like, then I think, should I be more nervous than what I am, or what? You know, that pain of nervousness up there is.
But I suppose you've got the sweet release of letting your clutch go and you being in control and you knowing what's exactly happening all the time, whereas they sit there and go.
That was something I really wanted to ask Cam, because you're the first person, like I've only done a few, but the first person on here that I see as seen as being a proper doer, if that's the right word. So I wanted to know what it's like now. You know, you've stopped. How does that feel? And you know, is what happens. I think this is a personal question I want to know for my own self.
Isn't it interesting you say that?
Yeah.
Okay, because straight away I thought of you because it's a range of emotions. I'm happy now with a family, and I've got, when I say a family, it's more my focus is so split with so many other commitments, and a huge thing is living on the other side of the world. That makes it easier to stop racing as far as it's a long way away. It's so hard racing from Australia. I mean, it's hard for anyone to put a deal together, to put the bikes together, but it is a little bit harder being a bit further away. So it was so hard each year to put the package together to go racing. It kind of makes it almost easier to stop. But yeah, when you come back, it is hard. You go through a range of emotions.
When you're, because you're obviously a job here now, but your first year back and not racing, but being here.
That was, it's like a blur. It was good though. The media job helped me because I was new to it. So I was out of my depth. I probably still am, but I was nervous and I could sort of put all that energy into something else. Yeah. And I've said to a few people, I probably wouldn't have come back for a couple of years. I probably would have distanced myself. Then I would have come back and sat in the hedge and had a beer and probably enjoyed it. But for the first year or two after, whether I would have come back and been involved, I think if it wasn't media, I would have wanted to be involved with mentoring or another rider. Which I have worked with other riders, but I would love to do that or be more involved with the running of a team or being part of it. And I remember speaking to Philip Neal about it at the time and, you know, options there or looking at maybe doing something like that. Also very aware you have to be very careful as an ex-rider quite soon how you went about that. But I've got to jump back to this story. Okay, post-COVID, we come back and we hadn't seen everyone for years. And we came back and so many people kept saying, you're looking well, you're looking fit, you're looking fit. And I had trained a lot leading up to that, just in life, fitter than I am now. And I felt really good in myself. And I've been riding a lot off-road and this, that. And I started thinking, you know, everyone's had 2 years off. Like, and I'm looking at a few other riders that had let themselves go a bit. And I'm like, you know what?
Have a go.
You know, I got this wave on the first day, this big wave. I started putting the plans in place. I got another Supersport bike, did a few track days, did a bit of clubbing. And I've gone through the whole thing, and this is as true as we sit here. That night, I'm back to my room, flicking through social media, and there's a slow speed picture of you coming out of out of Bella Creek. Yep.
Yeah. It's bad.
And it's like your front wheel off the ground, touch, and I was like, goosebumps now thinking about it. And you know what I did? I looked at the results that day, and you were like, P8 or something. You weren't even, and I went, catch yourself on. Like, that was the moment that I thought, like, I just forgot how hard you pushed around here. That was the defining moment. I looked at and I just went, wake up to yourself, Camo. Like, seriously, because up until then, you start thinking your romance of how good it is and how easy it is. And that just brought back to home. Riding around here is like a bar fight. It is brutal. Yeah. And it wasn't like you were P1 plus 2 seconds or 10, you know what I mean? You were just in the mix. You might have ridden that sector faster than anyone that lap. I don't know. But all I knew was, wow, I'm going to be riding that hard and I'm not in the top. You know what I mean? It was just, anyway, that's a long story short. I'm like, bam.
It's strange that you could still come here though, and you could probably, you know, top 10, top 15.
Are you trying to fry his head again? He's just got over
no, it's
that
a bit too late now.
It's
just 2022. It's gone now. 2020. Yeah, but to actually retire from racing the TT, you have to start racing the TT, and to start racing the TT, you have to have a bit of a legacy behind you of actually racing. So if we go all the way back, where did we start racing? Flat track for
flat track,
that's normally the case
dirt track, and I didn't start till I was 15. I started late.
Yeah.
Road bikes from when I was, 4 or 5, but lucky. I always say I'm so lucky I started late. I think because my brothers both started motocross real young, both went to A grade juniors, and by the time they were 15. 17, they were burnt out. They discovered girls and parties, and I mean, we all did, but I guess they'd, live that life racing nearly every weekend, and they loved it. We all loved it.
That's really common, and like even a lot of English schoolboys and stuff, and you only have to go to the track and see the way, I'm not saying this is what your parents were like, but see the way some of the parents, you can think, why would the kid want to do that? The parents is hurling abuse at him. Like, you start riding because it's fun. Do you know what I mean? You see a 7-year-old and they're out there throwing stones. Like, you can't even fathom what. And like,
Dad's saying, your bike's faster than theirs, and blah. It's just, so I was lucky. My dad was like, it cost us a fortune. I'm never going down that racing path. Right at the time, because my next brother up's almost 10 years older than me. So I'm like, begging to race, and he was like, you can race when you start working. I dropped out of school at 15 and started working. And
to go and race.
Yeah, pretty much because I hated
not
school.
into
But
sport,
no,
right? Yeah.
but it was honestly, it was both.
Yeah.
And then, bought a 125 motocross bike secondhand, and Dad was like, just straight up, if you knuckle down and you work, I'll match you dollar for dollar, we'll go racing.
That's fair.
But he's like, the minute you start carrying on, if I catch you out, getting drunk, smoking dope, carrying on like your brothers probably, it's off. So I was just like, pff. And I grew up, my hometown, it's a lovely spot, but it was pretty tough when I grew up. Yeah. A lot of rednecks, my mates were pretty wild, and if you weren't drinking and getting up to mischief, you pretty much weren't welcome in the group. And racing to me gave me that release. Like I'd go to a party and people would be like, we're getting up to this, we're getting up to that, and I'd just be like, no, I'm riding tomorrow, I'm racing. And even all my roughhead mates were just like, Camo's right. It gave me credit.
It takes them a while to like that. My friends are quite, not saying they're rednecks, but they're quite similar. And once they got the gist that you were half decent, or then that was like something cool for them to talk about.
Yep.
And go, oh, Cam doesn't drink, he's racing. And it's
Yep.
like this weird. You're like an outcast, but not.
You're still in the group.
Exactly.
Sense,
and I was so focused. I don't care if they didn't. If they started treating me different, I would have just bailed anyway. But the fact that I did have support from my mates helped, and like sometimes I felt like an outsider because all my mates play footy, like Aussie rules. Like everyone plays footy, probably a bit like soccer over here. And if you're not into that and you're not in the footy club and you're not locally, you're sort of just not part of it. But racing, I always wish there was a track closer to home so people could see what I was doing. But yeah, that's sort of, anyway, I started late. So I think that gave me a focus, and it gave me an appreciation for the opportunity I had. So I didn't waste it.
Did you have that same intensity as a kid then, or was it not until you started to be competitive on a bike that edge started to come?
No, I think it was intent. Two older brothers too made me very competitive. Like I remember, the XR100 down the paddock doing time trials and just trying to beat them. They were my idols, and even much earlier than that. And growing up watching them was a great. You wanted to be as good as your brothers, and you wanted to beat them.
Especially if he was 15 and you were 5, like he was like God. You know what I mean? Like from my little boy, Jesse's 5 now, and anyone that's like 10, 12-year-old, they're the coolest.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Doesn't care what dad or anyone. That is like the cool person in their brain. So to have that as a brother, that is racing would have been like.
It did help me, and even my older brother sat down when I started racing. I remember sitting down saying, "Mate, knuckle in here. I wish I had." Like. I remember him saying, getting drunk, going out, whatever, it's going to feel the same at
40 or
I think at the time he was saying 30, but you can't start racing if you're thinking about world championships when you're 30, Do it now. And I had some good, a few little things said to me that sunk in at the time. But no, always intense. Yeah. Still probably intense at times. Ask Kaz about that.
It's strange that you say you got into racing late at 15. Nowadays, we consider that late. It's not really, is it?
Bugs the heck out of me. And that's why I reckon my personal opinion is age should be even raised. They've started to do that. But, and I see it at home all the time with these kids on Moto3 bikes, and like you just think, just put them on dirt track, like there's only 10, 15 bikes out there in Moto3. They should be heading into turn 1, 15 abreast, learning that cutting edge racing. It doesn't even matter that it's not on the bitumen. They'll adapt to that. Yeah. But you need to learn that argy-bargy, that at home we don't have the numbers in circuit racing to do that. So I just think, and the same with, you can't do a track day unless you've got someone there with a laptop to run the bike. It should be just tip gas in the tank, go out and ride around till you're exhausted. I think that's the key for young, and not get too serious too soon, but it's the way of the world.
You can
now.
Sort of see that in Spain now, because that's all, fair enough, they are all in Moto3 teams. There's obviously money getting put in from the government and everything, but all them same kids are racing around a car park, racing around flat track, racing motocross. They're doing, obviously the weather is a lot better than England, but they don't care what they're on as long as they're on a bike. That seems to be the thing. And you see them. You see them on the track, on the bike, in their leathers and helmet. You think, oh, they're average, and then you see an interview after, and it's a child.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? At 13, you are a child. You know what I mean? And they're pumping all this information into them and everything, and you can't expect them to. And they say, oh, he's not good enough. In 2 years' time, you might suddenly click, and it might be, you know what I mean? There's a lot of factors in. Like if you seen Cam at 14. He, like, compared to a 14-year-old now, you'd have said, oh, he's not going to make it because he hadn't the stuff. You know what I mean? It's all relevant. There's so many factors.
Yeah. The cream should always rise to the top, right?
Yeah, but it's not like football. You can't go and kick it against the wall nowadays. Like he said, if you don't have the laptop, you don't have the bike, the tyres, it is pointless. Do you know what I mean? You need the kit to make it, unfortunately, and we've definitely gone past the point of if you're good enough, you will make it. That doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel for the riders that don't start till they're later. Like I always look at Troy Bayliss. You know, a lot of people don't realise first race 23.
Yeah.
His first ever race at 23. What a beautiful story. Will we ever see that happen again? Highly unlikely.
Yeah.
It's the way of the world. But I feel for, you know, I coached a lot of guys, and you see some guys at 20 and you say, mate, you should start racing. You've got a huge amount of natural ability. And most of them, it's the boat's already sailed to a point. Yeah, to a point. But how do you change it? But I just think too, especially in the Moto3, the whole thing, we should, like, I don't think we should be racing on bitumen thinking about it before 15 or 16. That's just my, but, you know, that's the way of the world. As I said, it's all, but that's what I love about the TT too. It requires a little bit more maturity. You know, I had a good chat to young Joey yesterday, Joe Yeardsley, pronounce it correctly. Yeardsley. And
is it Yeardsley? I've got to interview him later.
Yeardsley, sorry. I listened to a couple of different interviews and everyone was doing it differently. I had to ask him.
Sounds better in Australia, doesn't it?
What a great lad. And so young, but then when we're chatting, he's actually 26. You know, and he's probably lost a couple of years with COVID, but still that's young at the TT. Yeah. You know, it's young, but it's also a good age because it's an age where you start to know what it's all about. And I think you need to know that for here.
Yeah. So in terms of going onto the roads and starting your road racing career, the plan was always to go World Championship, or at least you wanted to go World Championship.
Absolutely. That was always wanted Supersport, World Superbike. Even at that time, I'd already realised that I probably didn't have the tools to go to MotoGP as far as the backing. Already people, you know, you had to be racing in Europe or you had to take a lot of money. And then got the opportunity to do Macau. And that was my first opportunity to do a street race. And that
how much like Aussie Championship had you done before going to Macau?
I started off 125 GP. Yeah. I did several rounds, but then I did 2 years of 250 production back in RGB days, and that was absolute cutthroat. Yeah. I mean, the second year, when we were challenging for the championship, it was Ant West that won, so it was a good year. Even then, he used to fly around and they tested every track before you went there. Like in Australia, sometimes that's 3,000.
He's still, Ant West still racing now,
I know.
Yeah. Does he? So there's still, what you said about Cam, there's
still doing a bit here and there.
And could you go to Macau on a 600 still then?
Yeah, and so 600 was quite big. Yeah. So then I was racing 600 Supersport in Australia. I think I'd raced in New Zealand, was my only overseas race. But yeah, we were challenging. We're in the top 5 Aussie titles, so we're going good. And then got the opportunity to do Macau. So jaw dropped.
How did the opportunity of Macau come about? And was road racing, was that on your radar at all then? Or was it not until Macau?
Not even remotely on my radar. It was not on my radar. Really? Full stop. End of story. No street racing in Australia. Love the TT. Always watched the videos. Dad was an older guy for my age. He rode and raced a bit of club racing, on British bikes. Pop, my uncle, they all had Pommy bikes. They all talked about the TT. I all knew about it, but I never even thought about it. And also, it's 2001 when I first went to Macau, 03. Whenever it was pre-YouTube. Like, I hadn't seen any footage of the track at all. No footage.
So what was explained to you? Did you think it was...
Just that it was a closed public road, and I was like, oh, yeah, that sounds...
Basically, someone rung Cam up and said, do you want a holiday? Do you want to ride your bike? Yep, like, that was all the information
you're young.
Required.
When you're an aspiring racer, to do a race overseas was just like, wow.
You're making it.
Turn up at this R6 and just go, wow, this is... And then, in the paddock with, at the time, like DJ and...
Because you can't even walk. People don't realise it. You can't even walk the track.
No.
Because it's like mayhem. The start and finish line's 5 lane wide.
There's no path.
No. You physically cannot. The first time you get round, unless some crazy taxi driver brings you around for a lap, and there's like traffic jams and there's no reference at all. So my first run round, well, obviously I seen some onboards and stuff, which is different to Cam, but like you're literally bombing down, and the first 2 corners are absolutely flat out. Like the place is meant.
I went over a week and a half before the race to test the bikes in mainland China. There was a 2-day test at Zhuhai, so I was actually over in Macau for the week before, and I had a scooter. Yeah. So I actually did.
That's probably
so
more
it would have been a massive, But I got to do a lot of laps.
Yeah.
And as I said, but I just kept thinking. But I was young and full of bravado, and the thought of there being no runoff, I was like, oh well. just it didn't faze me. It phases some riders, and it's not that I'm any more brave, but I did ride on the street at home, and I liked the excitement of riding around the street. So it was just, but I clicked and had a win in Supersport. So, and of course, with all the TT teams there, you start speaking to different riders and mechanics and people, and you just start going.
You all, it's not like here in Macau, you all stay in the same hotel.
Yep.
The same then. So you end up talking to people you would never talk to, or like especially if there's a load of Irish lads there, and he's straight in the mix. Do you know what I mean?
I told this story a bunch of times. I remember being on the bus heading back, so everyone gets the bus there and back, and I'm sitting next to this, with all due respect at the time, some older bloke, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, so who are you spannering for? And he's like, spannering, you cheeky. And it was Rutter. And that was then.
So he was old then.
Yeah, but he was to me, he was he just had this demeanour about him. I just thought he's someone's mechanic,
he was probably 45 then.
But I didn't, it's just... Anyway, it was such an eye-opener, but I always think of DJ at the time because he was the man here then, and Archibald and those boys, and just thinking, so then you go home and you start getting a couple of TT VHSs, and all of a sudden, well, they'll just go on a DVD, but it's like, they make sense. I met that guy. I saw what that guy did. And then you start, because you're a racer, you're like, oh, my Supersport time compared to, the TT, that's when it started.
Is it?
The thought of it did.
You can literally see the process. Oh, I've went there. I was quicker than him, and if I can do that there, that's literally as your brain. I can just go win a TT.
Yeah,
why
pretty
can't
much.
That's how. It sounds arrogant saying it out loud, but at like 23 or whatever he was.
That's exactly what I was and where I was.
1 + 2 = 9, and that's what we're doing.
But if you are there or thereabouts in the mix and you're potentially beating a few of these riders, then there's no reason why you couldn't think like that, though.
No, and BTS, Billy Barron, Northern Irish guy, he bought the I can't remember. I think he bought Flanagan Suzuki's at the time, and BTS Transport. He had a privateer team, with really good bikes from the roads in Northern Ireland. The background, just live and breathe racing. And he asked me to come over at Macau. I'd done Macau a couple of years, and I was always running at the front in Supersport. Had some good battles with Plato, with Callum Ramsey, different. Yeah. And
Plater was a British Supersport rider then. You know what
I
I
mean? It was Team Honda.
It was a level. It wasn't just road racers meant me now. People see that as but he was the best Supersport rider in England.
It was Team Honda and had luck.
Like you are now.
I'm a podcaster now. Never mind.
But no, I had a win over Plater. He finished second to us. That was great. Like that again. That was another thing where I'm doing the maths and I'm like. But I was speaking to. I remember Jack Valentine at the time about trying to get over on the Triumph. He was very helpful. He spoke to me about it.
B&M team boss.
And he actually spoke to me about it. And he said, "Let's try to get you in British Supersport." He was brilliant. Yeah. But even at the time, it was like, "Look, you're going to have to bring tyres. You're going to have to find somewhere to live. Do this." The dollar was like almost 3 to 1 at the time, and I'm like.
That's a lot of money.
I couldn't do it.
How are you funding that then? What?
Well, I was racing for Chinese teams. I started doing Asian Pacific Championships, Supersport, really competitive series.
Paid rides?
Yeah. Only a little bit, but still, yes, paid ride after being a privateer.
Yeah.
And then Billy said, come over and do a couple of rounds of British Superbikes. So I came over and did Mondello and Thruxton. The TT happened to be on at that time. I didn't even know it was on that date. And Billy's like, we're all chartering a plane from Newton Arts, come over. Fly, land in the field, and we'll go and watch the senior. And I remember ringing
What was that
Dad.
like?
Oh, man. The plane trip was terrifying. But we were going to die. I really did. No one told me we were landing in a freaking paddock. No one told me that. The plane's coming in going through rain, and I'm yelling out, where are we landing? Oh, mates, up there.
When he says charter a plane, this is like some guy's nearly paddling in the front of this thing. Do you know what I mean? It's not a private jet.
No, little push-pull Cessna with a few of the Northern Irish lads, and we... landed, but anyway, that day we went down and we watched the first race from Ballygarry.
That's a place to watch.
I know. I was telling a bunch of Aussies that I just did a bus trip with this morning. That spot on the stone wall is where I sat, and the first bikes came through. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but that year there was a 600 production race in the morning. And anyway, Bruce was one of the first bikes to come through.
So what year is this? 06, 07?
That was, I came here in 05 as a newcomer, so that was 04.
04, right.
And Bruce came through, it was one of the first bikes. And, to think, and I remember turning to the guys, I said, I have to do this. I said, Billy, I've got to do this. I've got to do this. It was just like the speed, watching the branches shake, like nothing like Macau, and the dust come up off the air, and I was just like, yeah, I have to do this, and got to the paddock and tracked down Paul Phillips at the time and just said, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've done, if anyone's got a seat. And that's what started the ball rolling. But it was that moment that I was like, I have to ride the Isle of Man. And wins, none of that. It was just like, I just want to do it once. Mum, Dad, I'll just do it once.
That's what they all say.
Just want the medallion.
That's what they all
Remember,
say.
Mum's like, oh yeah, just once. And then, of course, the rest is history.
So before you came to the TT, you hadn't done the nationals and stuff in Ireland. Was the TT
never.
first? So you did the TT first, then
Yes.
because when you came, this is I remember this. Like I remember everyone talking about it. He's like, this Cam Donald's rocked up, and he literally smoked everyone. Literally, you were going to new tracks, and you were
In Ireland.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a beautiful time. I intended to go. I was meant to race the Dutch and German Supersport Championship. I'd done a deal with the team, and I was coming over to test before the end of the season and do a smaller race in Holland somewhere. And it just so happened, so I'd done the TT as a newcomer, loved it, amazing experience, blew my mind, but I still wanted to go World Championship. I was still trying that. Like all races, you get knocked back and you get messed around. And then I got the opportunity to come over actually and do the Ulster Grand Prix for a team in Ireland. Asked me to come over. Richard Britton had left the team.
Yeah.
There were some Hondas there. They were good bikes.
Is that the
DMR, yeah.
Like I have these posters on my wall and everything. Do you know what I mean? That was like the first factory looking Irish team. Do you know what I mean? It would look
drop
the
deck
bikes
trailer
were nice,
and
yeah.
He was from rally, so I think he had a background with, we knew motorsport, and it was a good looking show. And I come over with my mechanic, and the idea was, he basically said, come out, do you want to do the Ulster? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, I'll give you a couple of £1,000, I think, or 1,500 quid or something. It was, for me, I had to get myself to Europe so I could get over. That covers my airfare, my mechanic. So I said, do you want to bring someone with you, keep your company? So my mate, my mechanic, we come over and we did the Ulster. I think we won the newcomers and we got a podium in something else. So we did good, like as a newcomer to the Ulster, took to it really well. Fortunate to get there on new bikes, but I'd never seen the place.
And there's a lot of, it's a technical track. There's a lot of, out the back is blind and really fast. So it's
Is
like.
it about four, am I right in thinking about 4 miles?
No,
Or?
a little bit longer. Maybe 6 or 7, something like that.
Right.
But that was another huge experience, blew my mind. Racing was strong at the time. The paddock was huge. Teams were there. But then while I was here, the deal over there fell over. They wanted me to pay for my tyres before I flew over and starting to change story on the phone. And I'm like, I'm not coming unless I had another Aussie, Kev Curtin, racing World Supersport for Yamaha Germany. I rang him. I said, to these guys, and he's like, mate, if they're already playing those games.
This is the
they need to
German
get on
and
the
Dutch
plane.
championship.
Yeah. So with all due respect to everyone involved, I was just like, no, I'm out. You've seen what I've done. I've already been over there to meet you. So all of a sudden, I'm like, what am I going to do next year? And that's when the opportunity with Yul Duncan, Wilson Craig, Robinson Concrete came up, and my career went from going that way to just that way.
Were you happy with it going that way? You made your peace with realising that you
I
weren't going to
was,
make it?
but I was a very motivated young rider with a lot to prove. And that's why probably when I got on the Irish roads, when I look back, I get goosebumps because, man, did I do some
Crazy.
Oh, he was awesome. He was, if someone says to me, think of Cam Donald or whatever, I don't know what age, I was young, but like that's what I see is him on that red and yellow and white, the bike and everything. Do you know what I mean?
Bouncing off
and
curves.
he literally just turned up, and you imagine how pissed off all these Irish lads were. This young tan, good-looking Aussie rocks up and smokes them all in the tracks they've been riding on all the you had Richard, you had like 5. Probably with Farquhar, Archibald, Richard, Finnegan, and these
Martin,
were these lads. Nowadays it's a bit different. So guys from British Championship coming, they're sort of like the top TT guys. But then the guys that won in national, you obviously had Rutter and stuff that were doing British Championship, but these national Irish road racers were on the winning or on the podium also at the TT. So they were doers on good bikes, not factory bikes probably, but good bikes. So you weren't rocking up. Like, no disrespect to Irish road racing now, but it's not at the level what it was then.
It was strong. There was a lot of sponsorship. The events were going strong. The clubs were strong. You know, there wasn't all these insurance issues and whatnot. But I remember, I was young and I remember Tandragee. Oh, you did well at Cookstown, but Tandragee takes years to learn, blah, 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 blah. But I remember Phil McCallum saying, it's a mini TT. Nail Tandragee, you'll go good at it. So I was just like, every time someone would say, this is your learning year, deep down, I'd just be like, and I look back, I think, what were you thinking? It should have been. But, that's one of my proudest results, to go to Tandragee and, win the grand final, and took couple of seconds off the lap record as a newcomer was just like, and I was just like,
imagine how demoralising that was.
But I was taking a lot of chances, but we got away with them. But it was great. You know, we had great rivalry too, myself and Finnegan and those other guys. Like, we had a lot of fun. And even, you know, he was a hometown hero at Scaries, and to beat him down there meant so much to me. And he was the first person to come up and pat me on the back and say, come back to my place for beers. Like, it was like a family racing over there. Crowd I'd never experienced. Passion for racing like it, knowledge for racing like it, and support. It was just, you know, the roads, it was a beautiful thing. It still is.
Do you think it was the chip on the shoulder of knowing that you've travelled all the way across the world? You've made much more of an effort, like Lee said earlier, to get there, to get on that start line. So you had a little more to prove than those boys.
In some ways, yes. On the other side of the coin, it was easier for me that I didn't have anyone ringing up saying, do you want to come over Sunday? Or mum saying, come up for Sunday lunch. I was here on my own or with my partner at the time, girlfriend from Australia at the time, and we were here to do one thing, and it was race. And I was just and I think that was a huge benefit to me. So I see other riders, especially locally. Yeah, I didn't have people coming up. I had plenty of people coming up wanting to say hello in the paddock, but, you know, I didn't have my neighbour or my boss or have to worry about work. I mean,
tickets and
I was just like here, and I had, so in some ways, yes, it was hard. And that's why I see riders from Australia. I think they either come over here and excel or struggle. Some get homesick, but I just found that for me, it was the best way to focus. And that's why I always try to travel light when I raced and just keep it about the racing. So it can work both ways.
Was there any of those Irish circuits that you got on and you were like, actually, this is a little too sketchy? Because they are. I mean, people that haven't seen these, people might have only seen the TT as a road race, but some of these Irish roads they're smaller than what you'd class as a B road back in the UK, right? They're farm tracks.
The first national I did was 14, and I was saying I drove down there in the race truck with my mechanic, and we actually, this is a true story, I've said it many times, we were lost, pulled up and said to this farmer, where's the racetrack? And he goes, you're on it, lad. And we're like, no, where's the 14, and he goes, you're on it. And we're like,
yeah.
Like, it was just like, and I'll never forget, after that we went to the mid-Antrim, and like Donnie, my mechanic, I'm back in the pits. I'm like, things handle like a shopping trolley with 3 wheels. It's not doing this, it's doing that. And he's like, where's it doing this? Where's it doing that? And he's like, right. And when practice finished, he's like, take me for a lap in the car. He hadn't done a lap yet. Mm-hmm. And we did a lap, and he just sat there quietly. When we got in the end, he said, like,
what are you supposed
do you want to get a KX500? That's the only thing that's going to handle around it. Like, it was just like, mate, like.
Yeah, you've got no hope.
Yeah, just.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if it's a crew chief from a track background.
Yeah, he'd never been in the roads.
There's a little ripple in here, and it's giving me a little bit of chatter, and they're like, oh, we can dial out. You know what I mean? You've got 3 massive jumps into a corner. You're like, well, what do you want me to do?
Did it ever get to you? Did any of those?
I've never done.
None of them?
None of them. Not one, no.
Because you're not that stupid? Or?
Nope. No, I left the same as Cam, thinking, I didn't think maybe I was going to be in World Championship, but I wanted to go and do BSB and excel in that, and then just things. I actually went road racing accidentally. I got offered. I obviously, as a kid growing up, I'd been to watch all that, and it was amazing. And my dad was at me. He's like, "This is not happening. You can race. You can go do British Championship. But you're not going road." Like, he was really good friends with Richard Britton, who was from our town, and I think the older I got, and a few people like Mickey Laverty, Eugene's and Michael's dad said, oh, Lee'd be good at road racing. He doesn't crash a lot, and he's fast enough. And Dad was like, don't ever say that to him or anything out loud. Do you know what I mean? The team I'm with now, they said, and I think it was 2012, do you want to come and do the Northwest? Because they were running Gary Johnson. And I was like, oh yeah, whatever, this is mint. Like, it didn't cost me anything, which was the big thing sort of thing. And I went, and my dad, bless him, there was somebody else at that time that was a newcomer as well, a kid that raced in British Championship from home, and he was obsessed with doing the Northwest. He was like, can't wait to go. And I was like, I'm not really bothered, you know what I mean? It was pretty lackadaisy. Went out in the first lap, and my dad, bless him, he was praying that I was going to come in and go, scared the life out of me, whatever. This other kid come in and went, it's not for me, Dad. And my dad was like, oh, come on, I come in. I was like, this is amazing. This is like the best thing ever. And he was like, yeah, the other lad just didn't even go out then. And bless him, and he was just like, well, just, this'll do sort of thing. And I hadn't even told him then that I'd spoke to Paul Phillips, who was going to go do TT. And I was like, it's already sorted. We can't pull out now. I'd sort of got all the things in motion, and yeah, went to do the Ulster and stuff that year as well. Same year, it was me and Dean Harrison.
I've often thought of yourself with that. It wouldn't be easy, especially being from Northern Ireland.
No.
I mean, it was a hometown for me for a long time, and the people were like family, and I've still got some of my dearest friends live there. I remember, I was teammates with Michael Laverty in the, for Taz, and, he copped a lot of flack. Like, you get people who dig all the time, I don't have the balls to go road race, car park races, and it used to kill me that, because you're like, I know, too, I was still saw myself as a short circuit racer that was just doing some road racing. I didn't see myself as a road racer then, and I still had aspirations for British Championship and other
but
things.
People forget you were, like, I can remember, you were in British Championship in Supersport, and you were bang at the front, you know what I mean? You weren't, it's like, and that was really rare then, so, like, all the other people we mentioned, they couldn't do that. Archibald couldn't do that. Richard Britton couldn't do that. Farquhar couldn't do that. Finnegan couldn't do that. So all the people he was beating there, then he was going, like, you were the first sort of person, bar, like we said, David Jeffries will have been the last, or Rutter maybe, but Rutter wasn't doing other road races at the time. So you were the first person to be fit to do both again before maybe now me or Pickman, or, because even now still there's not a lot of people that do. Like Michael and stuff doesn't want to do both.
I find it. I just think there's nothing better if you're cutting edge in that championship, just for your skills. Yeah. But as I said, that I felt for the local riders, because they did cop a lot of flack, and I thought it's so unjustified, and it's not fair.
It is. I remember, like, when I won my British Championship, no one at home really cared, and then a couple of years later I won the Northwest, and I was like,
household name.
Oh, unbelievable. It was like he's won and it was like a super twin race or something. My first race, it wasn't like, that's still a race and everything, but I just remember, and I remember saying that to my dad. I was like, the appreciate, it was just a completely different thing, do you know what I mean, to do that. So
it is what it is. I remember thinking that too. If Michael went to the Northwest at the time, so if he wanted to do it, he'd kick ass. He was a brilliant rider, but he didn't want to do it. Fair dues, each to their own. You've got to want it, and that's what we always talk about the TT. How would this one go? How would that one go? Back in the day, how would Rossi go? Well, if he wanted it, he'd smoke him. Probably at the time with his ability, but you got to want it. You've got to really want it, and all the money in the world won't make you want that. As much as we all, and some end up on the roads because it is easy to get sponsorship and it can send you in that direction at times. It doesn't matter when you're out with that helmet on. You're not thinking about the prize money. You're not thinking about paying the bills Monday. You are just
I think that's in every type of especially motorbike racing, because in other sports you can almost, if you're good enough at it, maybe like footballers or whatever, and you think, I'm not really enjoying it, but I'm making a few quid. It's easier than working and everything. You can't do that in motorbike racing, because the second you get hurt, you go. And people, men come up to me all the time at Williams track days, and they have a kid that's pretty good. They go, "Oh, Jimmy, he's amazing." He's out, and I go, "Has he had a big crash yet?" "No, not yet." I goes, "Come back." I says, "See how keen Jimmy is when he's laid there. When he wakes up out of being knocked out or whatever, and the first thing he thinks is like, is the bike okay? How long will it be?" And all the stupid questions you ask. If that's not in you, it doesn't matter how good you are or whatever. The second that happens, all of a sudden, all the motivation is not worth.
Cameron, we're going to take a pause in the conversation right there. Still loads to come from the legend that is Cameron Donald. And here is a little teaser of part 2.
And they never put pressure, but I mean, your teammate's Bruce Anstey, like, at the time, that's a whole story in itself.
The most irritating thing in the world, this man sleeping and then smoking everyone. You're like, what? Everything that logically works in your brain to make you good is the opposite to Bruce. You're like, what?
Go to Spain tyre testing, and you're sitting on the plane going home, and you're like, what do you think of that one? And he's just like,
no way.
Oh, mate, I didn't really take much notice. And you're just sitting there going, what? Like, what? And he was like, and I used to think at the start it was a game.
And the first place you can watch that podcast is right here on TT Plus, unless you watch it on YouTube. And if you are, leave us a comment down below. Let us know how well Lee Johnston's doing as a co-host. I'd give him a solid 4 out of 10.
Inbox is going to be full.
Do you think?
Fact.
I don't think so.
Not necessarily good comments, but it's going to be full.
Bye.